106.5 FM WPPM LP Philadelphia. This is Honest Matt. I'm here in the studio with KP Ultra. It's time for Poetry Night on the Ultimate Mixtape. This is something we've never done before, something I'm very excited to bring for you. I was out in Germantown. I was at a very special event, at an open poetry reading and a performance. And I met this man, Chris, this KP Ultra, and I asked him, would you come in the studio? Would you perform for us? Would you talk with us and freestyle and just do the thing? And now here he is. So I'm going to introduce him and say, hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. How you doing today, Matt?
I can't complain, man. I'm living my dream. I get to come in here in the radio studio, and I have that freedom and that autonomy to be able to bring what I think is something positive in the community, and we're not trying to, I know you got to make a living, I get that, but what it is here is just for the love.
Word.
For the love and for bringing something positive to the community. So you want to start out with playing something new for us? You want to tell us a little about it before we play it, or?
Yeah, this is a new poem called "The Process," Unique Voice, subtitle Unique Voice. It's off the new album that's coming out soon. The album is called 84 Ultra, and this is a poem called "The Process."
Ask why I am or died. The audio too, the two's audio. I got a brother and his name's Gizmo.
Person stumbles into an open mic with a new poem they want to share. Person is super nervous and still looking for their unique voice. Person performs poem and enjoys the feeling of being on stage. Person performs a few more times and gets good feedback from the crowd. Host of struggling event sees this person, asks them to do a feature set. Person is shocked. Person has never been paid to perform before. Person doesn't even consider themselves a poet yet. Person has no idea what a feature is, but agrees without any questions. Person scrambles to figure out what poems to perform during set. Person sees their face on the flyer. Person sees the flyer online. Person sees the likes under the flyer. Person imagines that these people will show up to the feature set. Person imagines the crowd and person imagines their response. Person arrives to the venue too nervous to hear the other poems. Never realized the butterflies in the stomach could be so loud. The host reads the person's bio. The crowd shows love in advance. The person does a poem, then another poem, then some more poems. Finally, the set comes to an end. Person feels relieved to get over the nervousness that had been building up. Person looks up at the crowd, takes in the moment for a few seconds. In the few seconds between the last poem and reaching their seat, the ego slides into the room. Ego tells the person, we done made it now. The person still hasn't found their unique voice. Person is no longer a person. Person is now a featured poet. The ego is proof. The ego is the proof. Featured poets stop signing the open mic list. Ego is too big to be held by a list. Featured poet shows up halfway through the event, but yo, give me a good spot. Featured poet don't even get nervous on stage no more. Featured poets say they so tired of you requesting that poem. Featured poet does the poem anyway, since y'all asked. Featured poet forgot how it feels to have a new poem they want to share. Featured poet is now more concerned with impressing the crowd. Featured poet is now more concerned with you capturing the right angles. Featured poet needs to get the follower count up to feel relevant out here. Featured poet begins to sound formulaic. Ego says it ain't the poem, it's the crowd. Featured poet blames the crowd. Featured poet gon' voluntarily run it back cause y'all missed that line. I said featured poet gon' voluntarily run it back cause y'all missed that line. Featured poet be searching for the love they got that one time. The snaps and the claps and the likes and the emojis and the follows and the recognition and the attention creates a high. A wave to ride, a peak to climb to, a state of ecstasy within the mind. Featured poet takes that high all the way home, shares the the high with the ego. Shares the high with the ego, cause ain't nobody else gonna feel it like I feel it, you know. And I want to feel that high as often as possible, to the point that it's only about that high. Feature poet can't seem to hit that high like they used to. Feature poet enjoys poetry, but ain't in love with it no more. The ego tells the poet to be bitter towards the scene instead of looking inward. Feature poet stops performing. Feature poet can't find the person they used to be. Poetry community ask on a regular basis, yo, what happened to that person? They mention nothing of the feature poet. The crowd misses the person. Feature poet found another passion, but don't really do the poetry thing no more. Meanwhile, a person stumbles into an open mic with a new poem they want to share.
KP Ultra, The Process. This is autobiographical?
Yeah, I had somebody actually ask me at the Sonny Sanchez celebration who this poem was about, because they thought I was talking about another poet. It's other poets in there, but it's primarily about me. I've had an ego in poetry myself, right? I've had points where the ego, my own ego, though never has been crazy in the public, it's been crazy in my household, right? It's been crazy at home and caused me to lose perspective, kind of sometimes life and sometimes your position on the poetry scene. I think as poets, like, we have to always know where we are. We talked about rank, right? So knowing who's better than you, knowing who you're better than, knowing what types of poem work for you, what's true for you but not true for another poet, what's good for another poet, not good for you, all of those things.
It's a long time of a learning process.
Yeah.
You've been doing this since you're 16 years old?
Yeah, since I was 16. And I think what's difficult, when I talk about the process, I've seen so many friends leave the poetry scene. I've seen so many people like start poetry. I've seen full careers, right, from start to end, several times from several different people. I have poetry friends that I talk to that just don't do poetry anymore. I check on them, what's going on? They working a 9 to 5, or like I said in the poem, they found another passion, which is cool. It's not for everybody, and but that's the toughest part. You know, it's 2024, and I only see a few of my peers that I started with in 2009, right? And so it gets lonely in that way. So just seeing the full circle of careers sometimes, and sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long, sometimes in the middle.
Is the process a way of you letting the next generation know, like, what they're getting into, like what could be ahead for them?
Yeah, it's very much a cautionary tale, right? Because a key part of the process is that the person goes from being a person to being a featured poet. And so when you stop being a person in poetry, like, that's a problem. That's a problem. We depend on you being a person. We depend on you being able to relate to people, right? So if you lose track of that and you become, I'm KP, like, I'm KP, but I'm Chris first, right? When I'm around my niece and my nephews, I'm Uncle Chris. When I'm with when my grandmother was living, I was Chris. I was never KP to my grandmother. My best friend never calls me KP. I'm Chris to him, right? And he don't even like when people call me KP. And people have been calling me KP for, probably close to 20 years now.
Is it fair to say that your friends don't really call you KP? That's just a thing? That's something that you project?
Most of my friends who have been with me the entire journey, they all call me Chris. But there's a set of friends from either college, some from maybe back home, where they might have missed a chunk of my life. If they missed my 20s, they call me KP now because they came back into my life at a time where poets and everybody around me was calling me KP.
Yeah.
And so they call me KP. But most of my closest friends that have, like, completely been there, since day one, call me Chris.
I have a little bit of experience with that because, on the radio here, like, I'm Honest Matt, right? And some people know, like, that's a thing. My friends don't really call me that.
Right.
And it's not really about anything. It actually goes way back to using the truth against people, as a defense mechanism or whatever. But that was beautiful. And you said that it somehow connects with Sonia Sanchez?
I was at the Sonia Sanchez event. I had this Chris Rogers, who does a lot of preservation work in Philadelphia. He's doing a lot of work on the Tanner House. Henry O. Tanner, who was a painter from Philadelphia, he's helping to preserve that house. Chris Rogers was at the shout out to Chris Rogers. And
Excellent.
I met Chris through the Paul Robeson House. We used to do poetry workshops at the Paul Robeson House with Yolanda Wisher and Aria Matthews and a few other, Peter Mason, who was poet laureate.
And where is that located?
That was at the Paul Robeson House over in West Philly. I want to say like 49th and near Walnut. That's not the exact address, but over in West Philly. But I was at the Sonia Sanchez celebration last month at the Barnes Foundation, and I had a chance to perform. I read one of Sonia Sanchez's poems for her 90th birthday celebration, which is amazing. Like the scene, the poetry scene is a big scene, and within that scene are like 10 different scenes. And on one of those 10 different scenes is a really great appreciation for Sonia Sanchez, who was doing it before all of us.
Would you say that she's one of the poets that inspired you to pick up and start doing it?
When I was 14 years old and I started writing poetry, I would go to the local library back home in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And so it's two sides. On one side, I was listening to hip-hop. I'm listening to Outkast, Aquemini, and Common's Like Water for Chocolate. We'll talk about Common later, or maybe not.
Absolutely. Always room for Common.
So on one side, I'm listening to hip-hop, and, you know, I think it's a particular year where Aquemini comes out, The Love Movement by Tribe Called Quest, Brand Nubian Foundation album, Jay-Z Volume 2. And I'm writing poetry. I'm coming into poetry in that year. So on one side, I'm listening to hip-hop. On the other side, I'm digging into poetry. I'm checking out books of poetry from the library. So I'm checking out Jeremiah Baraka. I'm checking out James Baldwin, his set of poems called Jimmy's Blues. I'm reading Nikki Giovanni, and I'm reading Sonia Sanchez. In reading Sonia Sanchez, she has this poem called Elegy for Move 9. And I never heard of Move 9. I'm in Arkansas. I'd never been to Philadelphia at the time. This is 1999. And so one of her poems is Elegy for Move 9. And this is how I found out about the move. This is how I found out about Move and the bombing in Philadelphia. This is how I found out through Sonia Sanchez poetry. So that's the power of poetry, right? That this one person could write a poem 20 years before I read it, and it opens me up to a whole set of knowledge, and I begin to understand the city of Philadelphia, and the black people who live in it, and their relationship to the government and all that, even in 1999 as a 14-year-old in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
That is powerful, and it's a great way to pass along history.
Yeah,
for
sure.
It's a great way to, to keep things alive, and hopefully to have it never happen again.
And can I talk about my first time meeting Sonia Sanchez?
I would love that.
So the first time I met Sonia Sanchez, I'm at a poetry festival in Washington, D.C. I lived in D.C. 07 to 08, right after I graduated from college in Georgia. So it's the Split This Rock Poetry Festival. It was being held at Bus Boys and Poets at 14th and V, which I'm featuring in January.
Oh, excellent.
Crazy. Yeah, I'll be featuring there. It's a Tuesday. Martin Luther King, the day after Martin Luther King holiday, I'm featuring at Bus Boys.
In Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C.
Which, by the way, we're streaming all around the world, so there may be people in that area who are listening to us tonight.
For sure.
On the worldwide.
Right, so if you're in D.C., I believe it's January 22nd, I want to say, but the day after Martin Luther King Day, 2025, I'm featuring at D.C. So at the Bus Boys and Poet in 14th and V. Anyway, it's the Split This Rock Poetry Festival. And it's a couple things that I remember from this time. The first thing I remember is that out of all of the poets I knew in D.C., and this is no shade to anybody, but out of all the poets I knew in D.C., there was only one other person at that festival that I was familiar with. That means there was a whole scene that was not attending that poetry festival, right? Because I have to say that I love spoken word, I do spoken word, but I'm also a student of your traditional poetry, your literary poetry, publishing the book, academic side of poetry, right? Because I believe in knowing both sides. We can say we do spoken word and have a hip-hop leaning influence, but then there's the literary side and what it looks like on the page, and I respect both, right? for 10 years, I published poets, right? So I respect the page as much as I do the stage. And at this festival, I was definitely the only black poet there that I knew. So, you know, my peers weren't necessarily there. And I knew that gave me a leg up. I knew that gave me a leg up in 2007. And so anyway, I walk in the Bus Boys, and I walk into it's the Langston Hughes room where the stage is. Walk into the Langston Hughes room, and there sitting by herself is Sonia Sanchez. And I was like, oh my God, I cursed. I look around, and I'm like, I'm about to go talk to Sonia Sanchez. Nobody's stopping me. There's no security around. She's sitting there chilling. And so I go in, I speak to her, I introduce myself. Hey, my name's Christopher K.P. Brown. I do poetry, read your work, grew up, you know, reading your work as a teenager and all of this. And probably talked to her for about maybe, I guess, 10, 15 minutes. But the key part in it, I'm telling her that, oh, I grew up on your work, and I'm referencing Homegirls and Hand Grenades and all of her, this older word stuff that came out in the 70s, right? And she's like, well, what about the new stuff? She's like, that's cool, but are you reading my new stuff? I'm currently a poet, right? I'm writing right now. I have new poetry. Are you reading that? And that was like, I was not expecting that response from her. And she was right. No, I hadn't been reading the new stuff. She was kind of like a relic to me, you know, as opposed to a current poet. And so in 2024, I feel the same thing, right? I'm around poets and I hear like legend and icon, and I'm like, don't call me that, because I got new poems that we don't know if they're good or not, right?
Yeah, that really humanized her. Like you might have had her a little bit up on a pedestal.
Right, very much on the pedestal.
Very much.
Yeah, very much up on the pedestal. And in a way, you know, the danger in that is that I don't go out and buy that new book of Sonia Sanchez. She has a new book and I'm not supporting, but I, you know, got her on this pedestal.
You call yourself supporting, and yet you're leaving her.
Yeah.
You're leaving her in her time when she wants to put out something new, and now you're saying the same thing for yourself.
Yeah.
Let's play a little Sonia Sanchez.
Okay, sweet.
I have a poem called Tupac, all queued up.
Word.
Tell me what happened at this festival.
Yeah.
How did you feel different there?
It's the Split This Rock Festival, the Split This Rock Poetry Festival in D.C. And at the time, I was going to open mics in the city, in D.C., right? And then come to this festival, and I don't see anybody I recognize. The one person I do see was the white dude I knew from the spoken word bass probably scene. And so I didn't feel like I was with my peers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, because you didn't see people that so-called looked like you or whatever, and we're so polarized and, you know, kind of like walking on eggshells around topics and stuff like that. I wanted to just say, hey, no, Chris, they were your peers.
They were my peers. And when I say when I said they weren't my peers, what I'm thinking about is that I'm in this spoken word world at the time, which I still am now, mainly. And that I see a different set of people at the open mics in the city. This is true in D.C., Philly, Georgia, Arkansas. When I go to open mic, most of the people there are black. When I go to a poetry reading, you know what I mean? Like, most people are white.
So what was the event that I met you at?
That was an interesting mix. And so we were at Say It With Your Chest, open mic in Germantown, which I'm featuring at next Friday or October 25th.
Oh, come on out, October 25th.
Yeah, October
KP
25th.
Ultra. He's gonna inspire you.
It's the first feature in a whole line of features coming up. But that's the first, and I'm excited about that show. I'm going to do the menu. The menu is when the poetry gets to pick the people get to pick the poems.
The people get to pick the poems.
The crowd gets to pick.
Oh,
the poem,
can you break that down a little bit for me and tell me what that's like?
So I have a menu that I give out. This is pretty much how I always have done my features. So I give the crowd a menu. The menu has the title of 10 poems, and under each title is a line from the poem to kind of give you an idea what the poem is about. And so, because I like a lot of call and response, I was born in a Southern Baptist church, so I like a lot of call and response.
I like that.
So I'll say, hey, I'll count to 3, 1, 2, 3. Whoever yells out the poem the loudest, I hear first, right? The loudest, that's the poem I'll do. And we do it that way. Like, you have a menu, you have all the poem titles, so you pick which poems you want to hear.
May I have a menu?
Yeah, you'll have a menu at the.
No, I'm
feature
saying
set.
right now. May I? Right now.
The menu hasn't been created.
All
right
right,
now,
all right.
Because we're I'm memorizing new pieces, and I switch the menu up sometimes. It's not always the same 10 pieces. It's about probably 30 poems I pull from.
But going back to what we were saying before, you're saying that there's more diversity in a poetry scene than there is in a spoken word scene. Is that what I heard?
No, what I'm saying is, so Martin Luther King used to talk about how Sunday morning was the most segregated time in America. I'm saying that that's true in poetry. 7
How
p.m.
so? Make it plain. Make it plain.
Because over here are where all the black poets are, and over here are where all the white poets are. Now, every now and then, you have a few black people over here in the white space because black people in America have always had to have that two-ness, right, to be able to speak how we speak and then speak how the majority speaks, right? So the black poets, I think, are more likely to cross the line. But when we come into the spoken word, mostly black events, you might see 1 or 2 white people, if any at all. I went to event Sunday. There were no white people there. That wasn't a shock to anybody, right? But, you know, if I go to other events, I see more of a mixture, right? I might see more black people popping into a space that might be mostly the majority. And so, but in that, let's get to the root of it. A lot of people just don't respect spoken word poetry. They don't even consider it poetry. They consider it hip hop and, you know, not real poetry, right? But we're doing things and we're using devices that don't even have a name yet.
So would you say it's non-academic, but certainly a school of poetry?
For sure. That's exactly the way I put it.
You like that? You like the way I put it like that?
It's like Nas isn't studied to, like, you know, 10 to 15 years after Illmatic, right? But what Illmatic comes out in the early 90s. It's amazing, but we don't want to give it credit because we don't even know how to talk about it yet. So in spoken word right now, we're doing a lot of amazing things that nobody even knows how to describe or talk about. And because we're not there yet, it just gets discredited in a lot of ways. But spoken word has been around since the early 90s. It's been around since Illmatic. Saul Williams was in New York killing poetry slams in the early 90s, right? And so slam has been around for 30 years now. And there are a few books on it, but it's not a course at your local university. It's not a part of the English department, right? But we're using English and we're doing some amazing things with the language. So why isn't it being studied? So that's what I mean. Like, there's the spoken word side and then there's the more traditional academic side. And those two worlds don't often collide.
So when the innovators start innovating, mainly they could be misunderstood when they're first coming on the scene, if they're not fitting into any mold that anybody understands or knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you brought a friend here tonight?
Yeah, I brought a friend
Let's
here.
bring him on. Let's bring him on.
L1 the Philosopher. I've seen you perform like quite a few times, but L1 the Philosopher, I want to bring him in because they have an exciting event that I'm going to be at next on October 12th.
Thank you.
And he's going to be hosting the event October 19th as well. So,
do you think people know how to understand what you're doing?
To a certain degree, spoken word is a unique art. It's performance based. Everything is performance. So it's about how you use your voice, use your words, your metaphors, your statements. Can you make people feel? And sometimes that's hard to do without music, and we do it a cappella. Mm-hmm. So we could bring people in. It's like a master speaker speaking. So I feel like I do very well, and people understand what I'm giving to them.
If they're there and if they give it the chance.
Yes, yeah.
But they have to be there.
I do feel like people who are there, though, spoken word events, people do open their ears, and they're ready to listen.
And feel.
Yes.
I love that. And you're talking about performance. Do you think it's about time that we get Chris to perform?
Oh, yes. I changed it, but
that's
yes,
okay.
He's been great on page. You heard him on the beats, but now you can hear him do his spoken word. You can feel him when he speaks.
All right. Well, you have any idea what you're going to perform for us?
Yeah, I was going to do Whole Foods, but in the conversation, I feel like I should do Lineage.
I think so.
Yeah, we'll do Lineage.
I'm going to turn both of our mics off. You're going to be the only mic on right now.
Okay. And Lineage is, this is from a chapbook I released in 2014 called, so my full name is Christopher K.P. Brown. and the chapbook is called Brown versus the Board of Education. Board as in BORED, Brown versus the Board of Education. This is called Lineage. I rarely do this piece. This is that dialect, intellect, intersection between Nikki G and Chuck D, Baraka and Bambaataa, Sanchez and Sean Carter. Poetry be the mother, hip-hop be the father, spoken word the child, and we be the authors. Dialect, intellect, intersection between Amethyst Rock and Respiration, lyrics to go mixed with Langston, Lucille Clifton pressed up against It Takes a Nation, ATLians put on pause so we could study Robert Hayton. This be the thin line between Tupac and the last poets, Biggie and Gil Scott, the black arts movement interlaced with the golden age of hip-hop. We be the receivers of slang spoken through speakers. When truth was put down on pages, we picked it up. We were the readers. This is tradition. This is culture. This is what lineage looks like when portrayed by a bottom boy pushed out circa 1984, raised on Goody Mob and Gwendolyn Brooks, modern day rap music and vintage books, Arrested Development put into the same cup as the Watts prophets, humblest, but we need to see profit. Check the rhyme. Nah, check the DNA. See what this art was made from. An oral tradition mixed with oral tradition only to create a new oral tradition. This ain't spitting, this is regurgitation. The expulsion of materials that were fed into the black body, the black brain, the black struggle, the black pain, the downfall, the black rain, the Kanye's and Phyllis Wheatleys, the Rakims and Matabutis, a conscious rapper reciting County Cullen to his groupies. This is that dialect, intellect, intersection between Chuck D and Nikki G, Baraka and Bambaataa, Sanchez and Sean Carter. Poetry be the mother, hip-hop be the father, spoken word the child, and we be the authors. That's it. Lineage.
That's pretty amazing. As far as, just like kind of leaving me speechless.
Word.
And just leaving me with okay, that's a lot to unpack and to say. And so what's your greatest hope with something like that in a room full of people? Do you have a desire for an outcome for somebody who you get to put that out there to?
Yeah, I believe, to me, poetry there's always a question in a poem. There's always what was that line about? Like, what is that? What are we saying there? Who's Goody Mob? Who's the Watts Prophets? Who are these people? You know what I mean? Like, if there's a name in that poem that's not familiar with you, if you know Sonia Sanchez, but you don't know Robert Hayton, if I mention John Berryman and the Dream Songs in a poem, and you're like, what are you talking about? Well, I'll go, John Berryman was a poet from a while back, right? This white poet who the sound of his poetry I enjoyed, and we can get into the Dream Songs and all of that, right? So I want to, I'll step back a little bit. I talk about race very clearly because I grew up in the South, and I was an African American Studies major in college, so that's something just kind of always at the forefront for me. But in the poem, when I get off stage, I like to that was dope, KP, that's cool. What really makes me happy though is when there's a question or they're like, man, I don't know about that line. Like, you really feel that way? Or I feel this way. I love having conversations about the lines, about the poems, right? I like the conversations and the questions and because a lot of times a poet does a poem and people go, man, that's deep. Yeah, it is deep. So what down there in the bottom of that poem are we gonna reach for and talk about?
Yeah, what makes it deep?
Yeah,
it's one thing to say that something is deep, but it's another thing. So I guess going back to this whole peer thing, maybe I'll get more to the.
Phone died. But yeah, go ahead.
Your phone died?
Yeah, it doesn't
and
matter.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
So do you believe that only the black artists or the black poets or the black spoken word community, are they really your only peers? That's what I was really getting at before. I'm a white person. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm not, but I am.
So Andrea Gibson is a dope poet, white poet, and I respect them. I like their work. I don't I'm not often in the same circle. I don't hear that name very often. The last time I heard that name was from a white poet. I don't hear black poets talking about them. And they're a dope poet. And so I would say they're my peer. They're a poet as well. So I would say all poets are my peers.
I like that.
Yeah.
I personally, when I studied psychology, I'm an intellectual sort of person, like maybe an overthinker, and because, and as a matter of fact, we were texting about this, and I was saying something about, will we evolve past this shibboleth? I love using that word, and I don't know if you ever dropped that in the spoken word.
I have not.
But maybe it's my encouragement. And a shibboleth is a myth. It's a made up thing. It's I know race is real. I'm not saying it's not. Okay, but it is a social construct, something that people have bought into. No.
Yes. Well, historically, yes.
Yeah.
Please help me out. I mean, this is not easy for me right now.
No. You're talking your truth, and that's what we're here for, to listen to each other and learn from each other. So I understand what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
And so I ran for a long time with that, saying it's not a thing, like we can get past it because it's not really a thing. People just have to stop believing in it. But that's really discounting a lot of people's experience. And I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to do that.
Well, the issue is putting one over the other, right? When you say mine is better than yours or yours is better than mine, right? That's the issue, right? But if we say, like, here's an apple and here's an orange, both have nutrients, right? Both, have their value. But in America, we traditionally have put one over the other, right? And that, to me, is the issue, right? But there's something, and I guess I'll say, some people say they're colorblind. And that's not something, I don't wish it all for a colorblind America. To say that you don't see my blackness is to not see me, right? I am very much like, my blackness is so much a part of my story. I don't know if a white person feels that way. I don't know if a white person said my whiteness is so much a part of my story, but I would always say my blackness is so much a part of my story.
Can I say that my whiteness, the way that it's a part of my story, is feeling ashamed of it?
Yeah, you can say that. And you should, because if it's true,
it's absolutely my truth. Listen,
Yeah.
I was one of only very few white kids in my high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was really terrorized.
I can see that. Because we terrorize white people in my school. Same.
I really was
not bragging about that, but yeah.
And it didn't fill me with hate. I'm not filled with hate. As a matter of fact, I hope this doesn't land in a bad way on you. I'm inviting you in here, but I'm saying that I think that black culture is more resilient, and I'm jealous of it. I'm envious of the way that hardship is used, and things like poetry and things like blues. I love the blues music. I mean, like really a lot, and things like that, like bonding together through adversity is something and it comes out of a terrible tragedy. I don't wish a tragedy on anybody. I don't want that for anybody,
right?
But I sit back and I look and I kind of get a little jealous. I'm like, wow, I don't have that kind of bond with my family,
right?
How does that land on you, El?
That right there. Okay, so like, jealous is interesting, and I'm happy that you could feel the jealousy, because I'm not jealous of, like, it's hard. It's hard being reminded everywhere you go.
What are you reminded of everywhere you go?
That is like it's a difference. You get looked at different. So I do feel like some things make sense. I do feel like the way you dress and present yourself does matter. But I think the problem is if I wear the same thing you're wearing, why am I treating different if I wear the same thing you're wearing? It's the reason why I wear my hats, my blazers, because I get treated differently in certain places, like more, so I won't be attacked. Police treat me totally different if I wear my pea coat.
Can you?
Right.
Can you get to a little bit more of the exact nature of what you're saying right there?
About my,
you're saying police, like you just kind of said a lot. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Of how I feel?
I really want to add something to that.
Sure, you got
right?
something.
That might, and
There's no problem. We're talking.
Are we anybody familiar with Souls of Black Folk by W.B. Du Bois?
No, please.
All right, so in the book Souls of Black Folk, and this is Du Bois who also did the Philadelphia Negro, which I'll sidestep to. Philadelphia Negro, he literally goes door to door interviewing black people, just, hey, what city did you all come from? What jobs do you have? He wants to know. This is the first sociology project with black people in America. It's done by W.B. Du Bois in this city of Philadelphia. He goes on to write The Souls of Black Folk. In The Souls of Black Folk, he mentions this concept called two-ness. I mean, it's basically two-ness. And he says black people in America have to always see themselves from two different perspectives. They have to see themselves from the perspective of being black, but they also see themselves from outside of themselves. How does white America, how does the majority look at me as well? So when he says, yo, I'm comfortable walking down the street in a hoodie, that's how I feel, my black self. But my black self in America has to be aware that when I walk down the street in a hoodie, this is what happened to Trayvon, right? And I can't just walk down the street in a hoodie. But if I walk down the street in a suit, I might not get killed today.
And I think that's what Elle was getting at, putting on something like a costume.
Yeah.
Can I say it? Can I say it like that?
I do like the clothes. Like I like wearing blazers and hats, but
And you like the way it gets you treated.
Yes, and I do feel like the way you dress does matter, but it's a shame if you're wearing the same exact thing I'm wearing, then we should get treated the same then. If you want to judge me differently for wearing a hoodie, then everybody who wears a hoodie, I should see that same sentiment through everybody, but I do not. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that. I worked in management in different companies, security. I've been different places. We are trained to look at people differently. I am comfortable with me. I love the world, but sometimes it feels like they just don't respect you back. I respect every person I meet individually, but it feels like I don't get the same towards me. I won't change who I am, but I can't act like it don't exist.
I feel like you said what's in my head.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
I feel exactly the same as what you just said.
And this thing is a burden, though, right? This is a burden because, so it goes in college, right? Black student walks into a room, into class late. They represent all black people in that moment, right? There's this constant representing your race that happens with black people in America, too, where, like, if you walk in late, Matt's late. But if I walk in, it's not Chris is late. You know, black people are always late. And so it's this representation that you always have that you don't get to be an individual as often as you should be able to be as a black person, and you often are representing the whole group.
I guess when I identify myself with a deviant culture, though, I can relate with that. So if I used to have dreads, you know, and I did it for a reason, you know, it was about dreadful conditions. Like I studied up on, like, you know, and I felt a certain way about it, and I was trying to be, you know, I was trying to be separated from this white culture that I already said that, like, I'm not feeling what we have done. You know, I don't want to be associated with that. I didn't do that. I don't want to get blamed for that, you know, anything like that. And, but as I do that, and as I mark myself as part of a deviant culture, a white dready kid with tie-dyes and big fat corduroys and, you know, obviously associated with maybe with illegal substances and stuff like that, you know, then I do get that. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh, those guys are always getting in trouble.
Right, exactly.
Those guys are always the one who
visually
he's going to get kicked out of the show because I'm drawn, basically.
Yeah,
I've just drawn attention to myself. I'm now drawn.
Exactly. Right.
Welcome to the city.
So where should we take it now, Chris? Is it time for Elle to perform yet?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's.
Would this be a good time for that?
Do
you want to play a song first and get ready?
Hey, I'm always ready.
You always
we come from the way, you know, I'm from the north side of Philadelphia, so
Word.
Okay.
I'm always ready. I do something cute. I mean, switch it up. Yeah, I mean, this.
What part of North Philly you from?
I'm from 13th and Dolphin.
Word.
Yeah, it's a fun neighborhood. Not that far from Temple University though.
Right.
So I used to go to high school. I used to walk through Temple University to get to high school. So seeing the dynamics of where I grew up at and seeing college life as a kid walking through was always interesting of how different it was from 3 blocks away. Right. But this poem, it's called Infatuation. That's
Okay, I'm going to take me and Chris off a mic.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
And it's just going to be you.
All right.
And I want to say the whole thing correctly, but I'm not going to, so I'm going to let you say it. I'm going to let you tell everybody your name.
Oh, no problem. Hello, people. My name is L1 the Philosopher, and this piece is called Infatuation. Infatuation. When you into somebody for a small period of time. I remember I met this girl. I thought she was top 50 of the nation. I remember walking up on her like, hey, who you talk to in this population? She said it's one other who got it popping with conversation. But the comments that he said, well, never led to fornication. So, you know me, I formulated a plan so I could be the one who could slay it. See, I thought I'd be more patient, and treat it more sacred. But at the end, she left me on idle. Yeah, I was aching. I was the winner up. Damn, that shit was tough. Talking to my friends, I was mentally right on stuck. I thought if I show her my mojo, back then Joe wasn't enough. She had a bubbly personality. She was sweet like a buttercup. I mean, she blossomed before my eyes. She was fly in all the power puffs. But you know what they say? It's a cold world, and sometimes people just fake like snow on a bluff. I should have took my own advice. You never know who you could trust, because either vodka and water look identical in a cup. Don't take a sip. I took a sip. I took a sip. Now I'm wildin'. Now I'm mad at her because when she had no money, I'm the one who put down for that deposit. I was black quarterbacking. I was coming out of pocket. But I can't get mad at her because, well, I'm the one who allowed it. I'm not mad. I'm not snapping like no photograph. I see that man, I shake his hand and ask him for his autograph. And ask, how did you spot her like a leopard? How did you get her with putting in meaningful effort? You didn't even have to show that you could protect her. Well, I was in the lab trying to decipher it like I'm Dexter. I know what some of y'all thinking, the murderer or Cartoon Network? I mean, it doesn't matter, but it's more formal than a ladder. It's like she cut me open, let my heart out the pasture. But to be real, I got to practice more patience because I'm the one who thought she was top 50 of the nation. And I did walk up on her like, hey, who you talk to in this population? She did say it's one other who got a popping with conversation. So I'm mad at her because I was too stuck in this factuation. Thank you.
Very conversational. Like that almost felt like you were not performing. Like in the beginning, it felt like you were just like telling me a story.
Word.
It's one of my favorites.
A wonderful philosopher.
Would you say that KP Ultra was an inspiration for you as you came up?
So KP, with me, it's a little different. So he said he's been around a long time. And I started doing spoken word last year. So I heard about the legend of KP. I didn't see him grow up, right? So I just knew him as the person who already laid down the foundation before I came. So it's interesting to always hear his story because I see it from the other end. I heard about the beautiful things he did with Bree Love and helping out other poets and creating this platform that I wish I was a part of when it happened, but was grateful enough to see one of the tail ends of it. So I look at him as somebody I can aspire to be, who has the respect from everybody, and who always gives back. I feel like I could reach out and touch him. But technically, I shouldn't. If this was any other art, any other music, our distance, I wouldn't know who he is. But now in poetry, it's like you feel like you can meet the people who was the people who shook everything up before you, and you could be in the same room quickly.
Is that humbling for you, Chris, to hear that?
For sure. And I know exactly what it means because, like in poetry, you get to go backstage and meet the person after they're done performing, right? Any other career, any other field,
you can see Taylor Swift.
Yeah, you can't just go back to, hey, Taylor.
Yeah, if you're a new singer,
I sing. I'm a singer too. Like, but in poetry, there's clear access, and we don't always take advantage of that, right? There are a lot of people I say, hey, call me, text me. Here's my number. DM me, right? I'm waiting on you, right? But I can't like force myself on you. But so I think sometimes we take for granted that we can reach out to people.
I love that. Accessible and just creating a community and making things possible for people, and it doesn't have to be a way that you're making a living either. I mean, you have a day job. You don't have to say what it is if you don't want to.
I got a 9 to 5.
Same here.
Yeah, of course I would love to have the art.
Oh, you have to have a day job? I thought you.
I don't have to. I've done both.
It's smart to have one.
Yeah, I'll tell you that I've done both. So I did. So what's interesting is like anybody who came on the scene in 2023, I'm still a mystery, right? You hear Bree Love, which is the open mic I did, but then the actual details. So details, for 5 years, from the age 27 to 32, all of my bills were paid through poetry for 5 years.
Wow.
And that would have been, I don't know, 2011 to like 2016, something like that.
What'd you say in the poem? Sometimes I have to repeat the line for the people who.
Sometimes
Can
you
you
gotta
just
run
say?
it back.
Can you just say that one more time?
So for 5 years, all of my bills were paid through poetry.
That's amazing.
And I had an apartment, so I paid rent, electric, gas. Stuff wasn't always on time. You know, like
still,
it was tough at times, but it happened.
Truly living the dream.
Yeah. And so in doing that, having a 9 to 5, so I've done that, right? And that paying all bills through poetry, it's noble, but it's not fun. And it was the least creative time of my life, because now it's like, oh, I need to do the poem that's going to sell those chapbooks tonight. I need to do the poem that's about to sell these CDs when we're still selling CDs, right? I need to do the poem. I can't do the new poem that I want to do on an artistic level that may or may not go well. I need to do the poem I know is going to hit, right? And so, you know, I've done Whole Foods far more than I've wanted to do Whole Foods. You know what I mean? I almost hate the poem. So Andre 3000 does not want to perform Hey Ya anymore because he had to perform it so many times. But that's what the people wanted to hear. So when you put the money to poetry and you say, I got to do this full time, now you're more likely to give in to what needs to be done financially than you are to give in to like your creative side.
I'm a total custy. By the way, custy, I don't know if you guys realize this, but in the Grateful Dead scene, in the fish lot scene, the people who sell things in the parking lot, like T-shirts or jewelry or other things that are, you know, they're looking for customers.
Right.
And
okay.
by me gravitating towards Whole Foods, I just feel like I'm so corny. Like I really do. I like the thing that everybody likes. And like I'm telling you, in my friend group, I'm the one who is the opposite of that. But when it comes to this culture, I don't know. Like I like the thing that's popular.
It's cool. The poem is a part of me, but it doesn't I don't say it represents my brand. My brand is actually a lot more my brand is a lot more aggressive because I actually am a lot more aggressive. I'm a very competitive poet, right? I don't slam because I think I'm too competitive for slam. I don't think I would take it well if I lost. I don't.
So
yeah.
for anybody who doesn't know,
okay.
I just want to make it clear that in slam poetry there is a cash prize.
There's often a cash prize.
Okay.
And there's always a number put on your poem, a number from 1 to 10, right? And I don't mind a number being put on my poem, but you know it gets tricky. It's tricky sometimes. But Whole Foods doesn't necessarily completely represent my brand. Bree Love doesn't represent KP as a brand. Bree Love represents Bree Love. I'm not as peaceful as Bree Love. I'm more likely to curse you out, right? You come into Bree Love, it's a place of peace. It's an open mic. It was an open mic event. You come in there, you feel love. I don't feel that every day. I don't feel that most days. I grew up on Southern hip hop that's very aggressive. And that's actually when I get in the car, I'm playing 3-6 Mafia and Project Pad and UGK. I'm not playing Sonia Sanchez when I get in the car, right? But Bree Love brand is going to promote Sonia Sanchez. It's going to I'm a student of Sonia, right? Sonia. And so there's KP the brand, there's Bree Love the brand, and then Whole Foods as a poem is probably closer to the Bree Love. And this is the last thing I'll say on Whole Foods. Whole Foods, the topic in general is about eating, right?
It's a very positive piece.
It's a positive piece.
It speaks to me, and it tells me that I don't have to do what my culture does if I can identify that it's not healthy for me.
Right. But the poem is about investing. The poem is about investing. There's a line in it. It talks about, I wish I could take the money that we spend on medicine in hospitals, in medical bills, and invest that in stock. Buy land for the family. That's what the poem is about, right? And so I get it, you know what I mean? Because on the surface, that poem is about, we got to change our eating habits. But the poem is connecting our eating habits to our financial struggle in the Black community as well. We get older and we got diabetes now, so we got to go to the hospital every week. We got to pay for insulin. Grandmother and granddaddy, we got to drive them to the hospital. We got to take off work to do that, and we're poor. but we're eating foods that are taking money out of our mouths, our pockets.
So we can eat smarter.
Yeah, we can. There's a line that says, "I will not sponsor my death."
Yeah.
Yeah, we can eat smarter.
I feel like we have to play it now.
Yeah,
We've been talking about it for
Yeah.
a while, and we can talk, off mic about what we're going to do next.
I don't mind performing it if you want.
Oh,
whichever
yeah?
you prefer.
Oh, okay. Hey, I would love that.
It's all good. All right.
I'm going to turn off the mics for us. Here we go. Another live performance. KP Ultra, Chris, Whole Foods.
This is fun, by the way.
I am so glad to hear you say that.
Word. Whole Foods. This poem was written in 2007. Just throw it out there. Born and raised on single parent lands, bottom boys. Born and raised on single parent lands, bottom boys, because we didn't inherit grands from our grands. Understand how poverty stayed in constant rotation like second hands, but what kept us cool? Love circulated like kitchen fans, eating cornbread and cabbage, hash and black-eyed peas. Those days long gone. I'm thinking PhDs. Conversation with my grandmother, the other end of the phone. I'm trying to explain why I stopped eating neck bones. Stop eating pork chops. Don't even want bacon in my greens. I ain't running from my culture. I'm running from heart disease. See, Daddy died of diabetes. Granddaddy did too. Giving myself insulin shots ain't what I'm trying to do. Plus, I don't like needles. Hate taking pills. When waiters ask about dessert, I say, nah, just bring the bill. Can't afford the cheesecake, nor the apple pie a la mode. Mint chocolate chip, I like to eat the whole bowl, but I'm trying to preserve my health. Trying to preserve my wealth. I'll eat anything for free, but I won't sponsor my death. I said, grandmother, I love you. I just hope you understand. I'm just working to improve, trying to become a better man, trying to stay healthy so I don't have to pay for pills. Wish I could invest all of that money I've seen you spend on hospital bills. But I know it's Southern hospitality. You show your love through soul food. I guess the times are changing, though. I'll take my kids to Whole Foods. And all that money that wasn't spent on doctors and meds, I'll take that and buy stock. Take that and buy land. So financially, family will be straight for generations. Both money and love will be in constant rotation. I said, grandmother, that's my plan. I just want your great-grandkids to inherit grands from their grands. Understand? Whole Foods.
I'm having fun too.
Word.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the whole. I mean, that's it. It might be a reason why that's the most popular one.
Yeah, it's a lot in there, low key. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the rise of of veganism, the rise of a plant-based diet, the thing like that. And listen, I love barbecue.
Word.
I mean, I love bacon. And
goodness.
these things are not healthy for me, and they're
Yeah.
not good.
The swine, known to sidestep the whole swine.
Yeah, and yet, as I listen, I believe that people are, evolving.
Yeah.
That they're spiritually evolving, that we're getting better. We got all these yoga studios. Everybody's doing, the more exercise. Maybe we're getting healthier, and maybe we're outgrowing some of the unhealthy things.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think thinking that one race is different or better than another one is an unhealthy thing.
I mean, across the board, the American diet is just trash.
Yeah.
That's just across the board, right? Most of it is oil and sugar. But, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But across the board, and I would say, a lot of people say, I don't want to give up this thing. But I say, like, hey, fast for a week or give up that thing for a week and see, do you feel better? And above all the science and any of that, I feel good when I eat better. My body feels good.
You did write it.
Yeah.
And you do feel that way. So
Yeah.
maybe don't distance yourself so much from it, like it is you. It's a part of your whole package.
So-
and we're here, and I do have to say that we're here on WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. It is 10 o'clock, and I do have to give the station ID on the hour. So I'm a little late, but that's okay because we're here with KP Ultra tonight.
Yeah, happy to
Keep
be
it
here.
pushing.
Keep it pushing. Keep KP or keep pushing. Yeah, so that's Whole Foods, right? And you're right that the general idea, like that poem does have to stay in rotation on a certain level. There's a remix to that poem that's on the album, 84 Ultra. I rewrote that whole poem. So the rhyme scheme of it is the same, but so instead of saying I'll take my kids to Whole Foods, in the new poem it's like my kids will grow their own food. Right? I've updated that whole poem. Sustainability, right? So I've updated that whole poem. There are lines in it that speak more about, absorbing glucose in the body. We get into more details of what diabetes is, right? And so that poem was written in 2007. In 2024, I have more information on the whole subject, right? And so it's just like, all right, let's take Whole Foods and let's do some more things with it. And I really love the newer version of that poem. And it's on the album. I won't do it today. It's not.
That's okay. You don't have to do it.
But it's going to be on the 84 Ultra album when it comes out.
And that is coming out at some point. And, maybe just send us a copy and we'll play it again. And, the great thing about the Ultimate Mixtape is that there's no boundaries for what we do. We have a bluegrass band in here one week. We have a death metal band in here the next week. I mean, this is music. Right. This might not be music that you like, but it's a diverse culture, and I'm open to everything. And I want the underserved, the underexposed, anybody who has something to say, it's great for me. I mean, I just used to make mixtapes. That's really what it's really all about. And this is the evolution of my mixtape.
Where I have a lot of, speaking of mixtapes, I want to shout out some friends, some hip hop artists. I actually started off.
Oh, please tell me the heroic poet you're going to talk about right now.
Oh, nah, these are.
You know a heroic poet?
Heroic poet.
Were you at the KRS show when he opened up?
You know what?
He opened up for KRS One?
Yo, first crazy. It was him, then it was Reef.
He just put out a project within the last month or so.
Yeah, poet.
The man does not answer his DMs.
I'm
just going to say, I'm putting him on blast right now.
I'm going to talk to him when I get out of here.
Tell him, please. Tell him the other. I'm writing him emails.
If you go on Spotify and then give him feedback, he'll answer.
Is that right?
I was listening to the newer project on Spotify that Heroic Poet put out.
Yeah,
and he definitely hit me right back because I was just, this
that's
is
my
dope.
guy.
That's your guy?
Yeah, that's my man.
Listen, sometimes I just be like, how you know?
Oh,
Sometimes I just be like, how you know?
I'm going to see him tomorrow. Yeah, we're doing an open mic tomorrow. So
get that number.
See him there.
Yeah. Do you also know who is T?
T.
Who is T?
Who is T?
I don't really know. I think she just goes by T.
Who is T?
Do you know her?
I don't know. Maybe I do.
She was almost up in there.
Word.
I think she's a she. But who were you going to give props to? Because I derailed that whole thing with the heroic poet.
To the Sugar-Free Robots. You have never heard of them.
I'm about to play them.
You won't find them.
I love that.
So I have a set of friends, and we always admire what Wu-Tang did.
Okay.
I have a friend, Brandon, who got me into even deeper into Wu-Tang. He introduced me to 36 Chambers. One of my favorite albums is Only Built for Cuban Links, Strive for Perfection, North Star Jewels, spirituals to me.
Bring them here.
They're down in Atlanta.
That's all right. We get them on here. We get them on around here.
Word, no, for sure. So Brandon, who in a lot of ways is my spiritual advisor, which is important in poetry, for keeping perspective. I can't write a poem like The Process without being spiritually sound, having a foundation. But and then Gabe, friend Gabe, he has Hypnotic, bro, and his brand is called We Out. He has a brand where he takes black people out into nature, and they just do hikes in different places around Atlanta.
I love that.
Shout out to Gabe. And we're the Sugar-Free Robots, and this is the name I gave us because we made a pact with each other back in 2007. It said, no matter what you do, you're gonna be sugar-free, right? And sugar-free was to say we're gonna produce things in a way that aren't harmful to our people, right? Mm-hmm. That's the sugar-free part. The robot part is that we're going to work so consistently that you're going to say we work like robots. So sugar-free robots. And this is we're not a group. We don't put albums out. We're friends, and we just check in with each other. We talk to each other. We study each other and the movements that we're making. We just inspire each other.
But some of them are making hip hop records.
Man, both of them are really dope. So Brandon goes by Beware. As a hip hop, as a stage name.
The letter B?
Yeah, B.Ware, Ware.
Okay.
And then Not. So Beware opened up for Plain White Tees.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that was huge. And then I got the we've recorded stuff together. He had so shout out to the Red Tape Chronicles. I definitely need to say this on the radio. The Red Tape Chronicles, he put me on that album, and it's one of my favorite. I'm trying to get him to remix it, remaster, and all that stuff, put it back out. And then Nodic, the Illiterate Papers. The Illiterate Papers is on Spotify. That's an album I want to shout out. It's one of my favorite albums ever. It's called The Illiterate Papers by Nodic, Notiq. Nothing other than ill quotes.
Wow.
Yeah. So shout out to Nodic, shout out to Be Weird.
It kind of makes me feel like in the second half, maybe playing a little hip hop, or are we just teasing a second episode?
No, yeah, I mean, maybe both.
The sequel.
But I would love some of the hip hop. I would love to hear some of the hip hop that you want to play for us. I would love to.
Oh, that I want to play for you?
Yeah.
Well, how about I play a poem?
Word.
Because I did pick a lot of poems. Although I do also want to do this. I have a lot of ideas at once.
Right.
You're talking about like the duality of your brand, and on the one side it can seem, friendly, inspirational and stuff like that, but there's this antagonistic underbelly that you're alluding to, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that No Limit Soldiers will push this button.
Yes, it will.
And I think it's time.
It's time.
Unless you have a qualm.
It's time.
No qualms?
This is a poem called No Limit Soldiers, and I'll just let it play. See what y'all think.
Oh my God. That's crazy. That's real wild. I can't believe you told me that. That's a crazy story.
I heard he gave you a name, introduced you to the fame, told you to only write about trauma, then he spit you out the game. So I'ma call him goofy, I'ma call him lame, I'ma ask him to keep his distance and never call us a game. Y'all were our little homies that we prayed to pass the mic to. Prayed you take over the scene because you had a right to. You were the most talented generation to come up out the city, but your mentor built a glass ceiling, oh what a pity. Homie never wanted you to become more than him. You were our shining stars, he put your light on dim. Once you remove his dashiki, it reveals his heart, his true life. What's done in the dark will eventually come to light. I hear the horror stories from the PY about the PM, face-to-face conversations even through the DM. And I ain't trying to re-trigger no trauma for y'all. More than anything, this is an apology to y'all. We sacrificed your mental health for the sake of judge-appealing bars. Along with the victory, you returned home with battle scars. You were poetic soldiers that came home with PTSD. Your biggest concerns now hidden behind a wall of secrecy. I ain't waiting for permission to speak on what's right. Heart emojis don't pay bills, and I ain't worried about likes. Be unique and be free whenever you decide to write. Master the page with no limits, then step back to the mic. More than anything, I pray your pen lives to write another day. Keep writing for yourself even if you never hit another stage. We're still yearning to hear anything you choose to write, because once you become a poet for life.
Yeah, once you become a poet, you become a poet for life. And I was told y'all wasn't even allowed to come to the open mic, but I want to shout out all the open mics that brought me this far, that got me to this point. I got to shout out Yolanda Lattimore, YO, down in Macon, Georgia, Poetic Peace. That was my home for a long time. Got to shout out Droopy and Dwayne down there in D.C. and Spit That, and all the hosts from Bus Boys and Poets, all the independent spots down in D.C. as well. All the independent spots along the East Coast and the South. Because back in the day, we would go from Connecticut down to Atlanta over to Texas. Shout out to Spirit and Max down there in Columbia, South Carolina. Shout out to all my Philly folks. Shout out to Just Word. Shout out to Stacy Dowling, Dowling's Palace, for showing the whole blueprint of how to own a venue and how to have ownership when it comes to poetry. Shout out to Eda Poet MC. Shout out to Shice. Shout out to Miss Wise. Shout out to Kerwin Sutherland. Shout out to everybody who was a mentor, who taught me to be a student of the game and to not have any boundaries about what I can do in poetry, because I really appreciate y'all, man. So thank you so much. Shout out to the good coaches. Shout out to the good mentors in this game.
Keep pushing. Chris, what's so provocative? Break that down for me. I might have missed a line. You didn't say it twice.
That was well played.
Word.
This guy's good.
What is the line? I heard he gave you a name, introduced you to the fame, told you to only write trauma, and then he spit you out the game. That's how the poem starts. So in Philadelphia, we have an institution. We had an institution called PYPM, the Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement, and we don't talk about it all anymore. At all. You hear me?
What happened to it?
It dissolved maybe 2 years before the pandemic. Some things went down with some of the coaches and leaders and stuff. Nothing criminal, right? Nothing criminal. So I want to be very clear about that. Nothing criminal, but then we can get into ethics and morals. And it's like, well, that's not the best way to guide teenagers. So you don't want to tell teenagers who enjoy poetry to only write about trauma, right? And say you can't write about this other stuff. And you also don't want to tell them they shouldn't go to open mics, right? There's an adult scene. So I'll say this. There was a whole generation of poets that went and competed nationally, and they were teenagers. And this all happened while we were over on our regular open mic scene as adults. And we really enjoyed watching those teenagers. Thought they're really good poets, but most of them today do not write poetry at all. Most of them are not involved in the poetry scene at all. And technically, they should be in this seat. They should be in that seat right there. They should have taken over the scene. They had the most training. They started off earlier than any of us started. They were extremely talented, right? But they were told that we would not embrace them. And that was a lie. They were told that the adult open mic scene would not embrace them. And that was just a flat out lie, right? And so now we're missing a generation of poets.
I don't think a teacher has any business telling a poet what to write about.
Hey, yes, ditto. I agree.
I agree as well.
I mean, I tell my son, now here's something that'll blow your hair back. My son listens to, he's been listening to a lot of very popular hip hop right now. Polo.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He likes some
Polo
polo. He likes that. He likes Yeet.
Word.
Okay. He likes some pretty hard stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And so he wanted to spit. Okay. He wanted to put some things on tape, on a little thing, you know. And he was talking about things that aren't in really his experience. Now, I did not tell him, you can't do that. But I said, I think I would feel you more if you talked about things that you actually go through in your life.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about things that you don't really do.
Mm-hmm. And you can talk about this stuff in the same energy as the things. But
I think so.
You can base it in what's actually going on in life. Take the same energy. But
yeah. Let's give a shout out to Max, to my son Max.
What up,
Hey,
Max?
Max.
What's going on, Max?
And let's give him encouragement to write about what he knows about, you know, like doing his thing, being, you know,
to be an artist, right?
Yes.
To be an artist this is a key part of poetry in 2024, in hip hop as well. The artist, we're one of the few people that get to stand out. When you go to work, you got to dress like everybody else. You got to do what everybody else is doing. In art, you can do the exact opposite, and we applaud that when you go do the different thing. I go to open mic sometimes, and the poets go like, oh, well, I want to see what everybody else is doing so I can know what to do. And they go like, oh, everybody's on love poem tonight, so let me do my love poem. And I say, no, if everybody's doing love poems, go talk about the war. Like, stand out. You're an artist. Go stand out. Because when it's time to book you, how do I distinguish you from anybody else? How do I pay you when 19 other poets just did a love poem the same way you did. So when you write your own thing, when you have your unique voice, this is what the process is about. The key line in that poem, it repeats. They haven't found their unique voice yet. Poet is searching for their unique voice.
In No Limit Soldiers?
In the first poem you played, The Process.
The Process.
The subtitle is Unique Voice. Because it's about, you have to write the poems that only you can write. Max has to write the songs that only Max can write. Right? I can't write what Max would write. I don't come from where he comes from. I don't have the experience that he has. And his experience doesn't have any less value than mine. He just needs to learn what the value of his experience is and pull that out.
That's what I've been trying to get out. By the way, you also told me about myself because I didn't realize that I was supposed to act like everybody else at work. That's why I'm always, people are always like, you. I work with mostly black women.
Oh, wow.
And I get a lot of this. You know what? I get a lot of that. They just basically think I'm out of pocket. You know, like I mean.
Yeah, I can hear that.
It happens.
You were about to say something.
Just
Oh,
part
no,
of
I'm not jumping on that one.
just part of being honest, Matt. You know.
Right. And so, in No Limit Soldiers, you go, I want you all to write. I don't care if you get on stage again. I don't care if you ever compete again. And the coach told them those things to win the competition, right? And we're going to talk about Pennsylvania in 1 second.
Oh, that'd be good.
But the coach told them these things in order to win a competition. And I just wouldn't push a teenager in that direction. Now, why No Limit Soldiers? I'm a fan of Master P. I grew up on Master P as a teenager. That's what I was listening to, right? So you hear my poetry, you can tell that I love hip hop. I'm not going to abandon how I grew up when it's time to write poetry. And that's what I'm asking these poets to do, not abandon who you are when it's time to write, right? And so No Limit Soldiers is, it says you all were poetic soldiers that came home with PTSD. You all were warriors. You all were soldiers. And so I'm saying, hey, soldier, have no limits when you write.
That's amazing. That is not as, you kind of built me up. Like I hadn't heard it before this, and you kind of got me like where I was like, oh man, what's this going to be? This is going to be something that, could be dangerous. It's absolutely the opposite of dangerous. It's nothing it's beautiful. Yeah. And I think it's very much aligned with Whole Foods, because in Whole Foods you're letting people know that they can, thrive and live and be and experience abundance. Not just in life.
You said this show was about how do people experience freedom.
That's right.
And how do they express freedom? And so, in all these ways they do. And No Limit Soldiers PYPM was about building, for a year to go to do a slam. And in Philadelphia, we at the time we had two slams, the Fuse Poetry Slam and we had the Pigeon Poetry Slam. And they sent teams to nationals for a few years. So you have the local competition, then you have the national competition. And so Philly sent teams and for some years. And we don't have, the Fuse isn't around anymore. The Pigeon doesn't send a team anymore. And the Pigeon starts back up this Friday. Today's Thursday. So they start back up tomorrow.
And where's that?
Philip Mocha, I believe. It's on Spring Garden.
Oh, right here.
The Philly Pigeon on Instagram, the Philly Pigeon. And so the Fuse is gone. The Pigeon is here, but they don't send a team. Now, we do have a team that's going to Southern Fried Poetry Slam. Aisha Hicks,
Yes.
Bars, working on it, AVG, 36 Chambers. I know I'm missing a couple of poets, but we're sending a team to Southern Fried. We're working on that. That's a big deal.
Are you helping?
I'm around. I'm always around. And so, I'm in a conversation. I'm not helping directly.
Okay.
But I'll say that I've helped in the ways that I won't speak on air. The poets in the scene know that we just went through a bunch of stuff on our scene, and that conversation was local, but behind the scenes that was a national conversation as well. So I had conversations nationally. That's all I will say.
Okay.
On that. But outside of the Pigeon, one of my favorite events in the city is Pennsylvania. This is one of the curators of Pennsylvania.
How do you get involved in this? How long has this been happening?
So we kind of started everything this year, right? So Apex is a unique poetry league that we do. We pit poets together to show their skill sets against each other. And then Pennsylvania is it's a slam. It's a poetry slam. Is when you judge people based on their poetry, but this is our first one we're doing, right? So Philadelphia before us was known to have like solid slams and slammers, but when I came in the scene, we don't see that many slams as it used to be. So I want to be a part of bringing some of that culture back to the scene. So on October 19th, we got this unique 11 poets already signed
October
up.
12th.
I am just saying dates just
It's
to
all
say
good.
dates.
There is some October 19th. We'll get
The
to that.
12th is a Tuesday, I believe.
It's a Saturday.
It's Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, October
We're all
12th.
messed
We're
up.
all over the place.
Yes.
We're
So,
artists.
yeah, October 12th. It is a unique event. It's going to be some dope poets and some dope judges, and we're going to have a great night of poetry. Top tier poets. A lot of the poets in the slam are people who are newer to the scene and some who have been in the scene for a long time. It's been I don't want to call it changing of the guard, but you're not a unique people who came into poetry who had different influences, who are now blending in with the legends before them. So I think you're going to see a strong skill set when you come to this event.
Yeah.
I think I just checked my schedule. I think I'm available.
Hey.
Oh, then you got a special seat on us.
You're gonna see Aisha with an A, who's
Yes.
working on. She's the main one getting this team together for Southern Fried. You're gonna see Smiles, who just became got a doctorate.
Yeah, so Smiles,
Yes,
Andrea L. Smiles is going to be hosting an event. Beautiful poet. She has came on the scene in 2023 as well, and she has changed the game. Lex Unapologetically would be a part of it. She is a brilliant.
That's her name, Lex.
Unapologetic.
The names are dope.
She's
I love it.
yeah, she's special to me. I always so I met her last year, and I always felt like I was gonna be the new guy that come in and change everything. I was so cocky,
Right.
And she came along, and people kept calling her the rookie of the year, and I didn't know her, and I thought she was the rookie for the year before. So I was thinking, like, what, this year she ain't better than me. And I seen her at one show, and she did this poem. I walked up to her and said, you're the rookie of the year, and that's my big homie now. I listened to her like I'd say I was Jordan, and she made me into Pippen. I always say,
Oh no,
yeah.
no, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that, but I always give her props. You know what I mean? I actually think I might too. Just from a different year she is, but I always give her props. She's a beautiful talent, and she's going to be in the slam too, and it's going to be a lot of dope other people.
And yeah,
She's Wizards, Michael Jordan.
No, she's definitely not. She's Michael Jordan.
No disrespect.
and
I don't
she's
know her.
Michael
I'm just
Jordan.
trying to make a joke.
No, she's Michael Jordan in '93.
Lex is dope.
She's '93. Jordan.
And chill too, like off stage, like
Yeah.
regular
Yes.
person. You
So
know what I mean?
take me through the event. What's it going to be like? Should I bring my recording equipment?
If that's what you want to do, I would never stop anybody from bringing their own equipment, sir. Like
It's gonna be a movie.
Yeah, it's all.
sure.
If you've been to any open mic before, it seems like you have.
I just went to that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a slam is similar to open mic. It's just the stakes are really high because it's a prize winning. I like to give money back to the poets because it's kind of hard being a poet and not getting the proper finances for some things. So we create events to try to give money back. So it will be a prize winner for the winner. We get a nice substantial couple dollars in their pocket.
All right. And is there an Instagram that they can look
Yes,
at?
they could go
Let's
to
mention that.
Apex Poetry on Instagram, or they could go to L1NK215.
Love
on
that.
Instagram. And if you didn't hear that, repeat one more time. L1NK215.
I'm following right now.
Exactly.
And what's Apex handle?
You know,
APL.
I always gotta go back. I think it's APL Poetry.
It's APL poetry.
You know, we have so many handles and so many things.
Yeah.
You know, but yes, Apex is a beautiful thing, and we have a special announcement that day too. What we want to do
word.
in the future.
Okay.
It's APL Poetry.
Word.
I'm up on it right now. APL Poetry, Apex Poetry League, followed by KP Ultra.
And I love Pennsylvania, I love Apex Poetry League because it actually has the energy of the city. You know, if I go to DC, I'll do Spit That. I'll go to Bus Boys. Now you have poetry, Pure Poetry Live. I know Color My Voice, I believe, is a newer event. I haven't been there yet. But DC is a political city, right? And so you can see that in the poetry scene as well, right?
Okay.
So Pennsylvania, to me, has the spirit of Philadelphia. It has the aggression of Philadelphia. And I love that. I love
Looks like
that.
it's in Roxborough.
Yes.
That's possible.
50
sometimes
5091
Right,
Umbria
Oakbridge
Street.
Sometimes when you want to have to feel the energy, you need to step out the city a little bit.
No, it's
right
great.
there.
From a great person, the person who runs the event is a legend of Philadelphia, Young Bob, who helped me out. I'm a part of the poetry group called the
Shout
Club.
out to Young Bob.
Yes, without Young Bob, a lot of this wouldn't be possible. So I do want to give that out to him, a legend in the city who's been helping the poets. I'm a part of his poetry group called the Club. Me and Lex and Smiles is actually a part of that group.
Word.
So that's why I love them, and Incredible Tuck as well, and Sweet Sadie. So just shout out to that before we get into anything else.
Well, it just seems like, I know, Chris, that you're saying that, it's on the wane, and that the poetry scene is, it's taking a hit here. But with all the names that I'm hearing, it feels like there's a lot.
There's a lot. And you want to, the only thing I'll say to it, I want everybody to be here in 5 years.
Facts.
I don't want it to be a fad. I don't want people to come and go so quickly as it has happened. We just getting over a pandemic. So what you're going to see is there are a lot of people doing it right now and doing great things and coming in with the good energy. What I love about the scene right now, when we talk about Lex, when we talk about Ted, we talk about Bob, we talk about Link, these people have good energy, right? So a lot of the old heads think y'all got egos or y'all not willing to listen to nobody.
They do feel that way.
Yeah, and it's that opposite in knowing you all, right? And talking to you all. It's like, no, everybody's cool. I haven't come across an ego that's crazy. Mello Jones has a big name, right?
Yes.
Mello Jones is big in the city and big outside the city, right? He has a huge following, right? And a huge presence as well. And the poetry's dope. Mello is a normal person. Mello don't come around like, don't speak to me. Like, you only got to, who are you? You know what I mean?
You know who I am.
Yeah, it's not like that at all. And so what I love about the scene is like when you have that type of energy, you can really go far. And so outside of that, it's just the old head. It's just us sharing our notes with the people on the current scene and say, hey, you don't have to do it this way, but here's an option on how to do it. And for the things you don't know how to do at all, like here are options if you want to do it that way.
Amiri Baraka on the Ultimate Mixtape with KP Ultra and L1, the Philosopher. Link.
Oh my God.
Too much?
I just love Amir Baraka.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has this poem called Dope. And he's like, ooh, 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 yeah, ooh, 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 yeah. And like he just gets into like, in the middle of the poem, he's like that sound of like a dope fiend.
Mm.
And it's a political poem. Like, it's crazy. I love Amir Baraka. Just what he does with sound. Like, he did it 40 years ago.
Yeah, it's great what the academic poets are doing, and they definitely have, a lot of skill, but maybe it's not as, I don't want to say a big word, but like, there's this word I learned when I was in school for psychology, and it was talking about therapists and how do you inhabit the space of your client, and they called it phenomenological. Like it's this big, long word, and it just means like, can you imagine what that person's world is like?
Yeah,
can you be there
Take
with
you
them?
into a place.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, with Yates, I don't really go, I don't get there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit with Jack Kerouac,
Yeah.
but with this, what you're describing, it's great. So you got one more for us, Chris?
Yeah. Well, have some fun.
I think so.
Yeah.
This is the one that inspired me to talk to you.
Okay.
It was a night of people getting up there, and it just seemed like, I'm not. I don't want to say it in a bad way to say amateur, but the people that had gone earlier in the night, they were courageous, and they were getting up there, and they were speaking their truth, and they were doing it. And some of their voices sounded small. And it seemed like you can feel that it was a struggle. It wasn't a comfort of getting up there and being themselves. And then there was one person who felt like if they yelled, that they would get their point across. But then it just seemed like you're just yelling. You're just yelling so that I hear you more or whatever. And then there was you. And when you got up there, it was a calm. There was a confidence. There was just a feeling of like, okay, I'm going someplace. This is a person who's taking me on an experience. So I really, and that inspired me.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. Yeah, by nature, open mics like have amateurs because that's where we start. But yeah, and yeah, thank you. I'll just say thank you. Yeah,
I get a lot of
I like
that.
that analysis.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me when I get to, reflect back to people, because I might not be the poet. I mean, I've been writing poetry for a long time, but I don't think I'm the one. I'm not going to go up there, and I'm certainly not going to compete with it, but I'll try to get some of my emotions out, and I'll do it for me, and it's kind of private, but I'm not the one, and I play guitar, and I'm not going to perform for anybody, and I make paintings, and I may hang them up in my house, but I don't think they're worth money, It's not a commodity to me. You
talk about the poet yelling. That happens sometimes. A poet yells, and like that's supposed to bring value to it. Sometimes it's fast, but the words aren't really there. And so it's these things that can. And I'm not. This is no shade to anybody, but there are these things you can do in place of good poetry. Sometimes I'm not saying I'm the best poet in the world, but there are some things you can do in place of good poetry, and it has a performance aspect to it. But then it's like, I really love poetry, and I love, like, what does that poem say? What are these lines saying? Not that they have to be deep, but what do they actually get into? And I'm 40, and my poems at 40 sound different than they did in my mid-20s. And so when you talk about the confidence on stage, and the stage is where I'm most comfortable in life. I'm in a relationship, I'm engaged, but it's times where in my relationship, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I got to figure it out on stage, because I've normally seen the scenario before. I have a lot more confidence. I normally, have a better idea of what I'm doing on stage. In poetry, when you tell somebody you're a poet, they go like, oh, like Shakespeare, like Roses are Red, or like, like Nikki Giovanni, like Maya Angelou, like you mean like Langston Hughes, Negro Dreams of Rivers, like normally not even that deep, but
Jones.
Love Jones. Like Love Jones, like Snap Snap, and like I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, but not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Art without revenue, well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. You watch Love Jones, but this ain't that. You heard a bunch of poems, but this ain't that. Could write about my broken home, but this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't. I came back. I claimed black, 'cause that's who I am. I came back. I sent it out like a telegram. I came back. I claimed back, 'cause that's who I am. I came back. I sent it out like a telegram. I can smell the scam. I can smell the spam. I can smell the fake lines written for the gram. I can smell the fake lines written for the slam. In private they be hating, in public they be fam. I don't really do this, I'm just playing with the flow. I break it down one time just to let you know that this ain't that, that this ain't that, that this ain't that. I said no, no, no. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, not the money. Well, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Art without revenue, no, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah. Okay. I'm 40 years old. I ain't playing no games. They doing that, I'm doing this. No, it's not the same. I write a piece, I embrace it with a unique voice. No trophies, no rings, but I'm the people's choice. For 20-something years, been getting paid for my work. From Texas to Atlanta, Atlanta to New York. Seeing my face on the flyer, name on the marquee. Sold poems out the trunk of a Grand Marquise. You can catch me on the stage reciting words I put on track. My merch on the table, the culture on my back. Got love for my peers, but I know what I hear. It's starting to sound the same for the last 5 years. KP or keep pushing, we don't have to live in fear. We all got trauma. We don't have to prove it here. I critique within the culture
and lyrically stay strapped. Don't confuse them with this, cause this ain't that. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, but not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Yeah, no, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Or without revenue, well, this ain't that. Yeah, this ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. Yeah. This ain't that.
So I think what it is, you're telling it that it ain't that, but I think what it is it's really just you.
Yeah, something unique. Hopefully,
I think it's just you.
without ego.
to me,
hopefully, it's something unique.
wow, we've clearly stated what it's what it's not, because you're not trying to be somebody else, and you're just trying to inhabit the space that could only be you.
Word. Oh my God. Yes. It's because like
And put it out there for the whole world to see. That's pretty hard. That's a pretty big job to try to just let your whole self be known. Everybody wants to be seen, right?
Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and Thelonious Monk, they created jazz, right? They made jazz music, and they let whoever else want to put a title on it and define it. I'm not really concerned about doing poetry the way poetry has been done. And I'm not concerned about how you talk about it. Like, I'm just concerned with creating it the way that feels genuine to me.
That's what I got. And then the other cool thought that occurred to me during that performance, and thank you so much for being so generous with your performances tonight, was that, you could read that and you would get meaning from it. But when you do what you did, it was almost like you made a sample within the structure, if that makes any sense. You started singing, right? And so here's like a sample from yourself, So how long? What's that?
Go ahead. It's just a switch up, right? It's just playing around with the art, like playing around with the sound of it. Yeah.
Just a switch. For you, it's just a switch up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I complicated it. I overthought it.
No, you're good. No, I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah.
So how long ago did you write that?
Oh, so this is October. This Ain't That was written in it was written in my current job. I was just sitting at work one day. So I mean, it was probably written this is October, so that was probably written in May of this year, and set in a notebook for a while, and really was the hardest thing for me to record, because it was so different for me. It's not even written, the way I normally write my poems. It's all hook, like it's really just hooks, you know what I mean? And then even I came back, I claimed black, because that's who I am. I came back, I claimed black. That could just be a hook, right? And so but I've always been curious about I've been curious about how do you write a hit poem? That's always a question in my head. How do you write a hit poem, right? Something and when I answer that question, I say something in that needs to repeat. One of the issues in poetry that makes it hard for the crowd to do it with you is that line is only going to be said one time. But if I have a repetitive part, people can sing that. People can sing This Ain't That. That's not really hard to remember. And it feels good as a poet to have a piece in my catalog that people can do along with me. My girlfriend sings This Ain't That. Like, she bobs her head to it. And that, she don't bob her head to nothing else, you know what I mean, that I write. She doesn't bob her head to the process. She hears the process and likes it, but she bobs her head to This Ain't That, right? I can hear her humming it, right? And that makes me feel good as a poet, because we don't get that feeling very often. And so This Ain't That is one of my favorites. And I'll say this, the reason it was written is because you come and you listen to a poetry feature, you listen to 15 to 20 minutes of poetry, and sometimes it's just like, oh my God, metaphor, 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 simile, 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 and it's so deep that it's almost overkill.
You get a little super saturated?
Yeah, super saturated. And so I'm like, all right, where can I give the audience a break? If I just did a poem called Death versus Destiny about not expecting to live to see 35, or I do the process about the ego and the path of a poet,
that they might not even care about because they don't do poetry. Where can I bring that audience member back in a easy way that's true to me as well, and still saying something, right? Because it says like, yo, like we don't have to write a certain way. Like we don't have to do what Nikki Giovanni did. We can love Nikki Giovanni. We can study her, but we don't have to repeat it. I don't think Nikki Giovanni was sitting around trying to recreate Phyllis Wheatley when she wrote, right? And so why are we trying to recreate anybody? We can just do what we want to do as artists in the parameter of poetry. You know what I mean?
So you've brought This Ain't That around to quite a few spaces.
It's been done. You saw it done at Say It With Your Chest. I did it at VIP, and that was my VIP voicing. Shout out to voicing Power Louis Marrero, Jovan McCoy. And shout out to Mike Phillips, too, because I knew Mike Phillips before I knew Jovan or Louis. So shout out to Mike Phillips. And his twin. So anyway, This Ain't That. I did This Ain't That at VIP for the first time when I featured there in May or June. And I did it at Say It With Your Chest. And I haven't performed it a whole lot.
Well, that's really cool. I would imagine that at some point the audience is going to start saying it with you.
It happened immediately. So the first place I ever did it was at an event hosted by Life. Shout out to Life. And
Night of Words, I was there.
Word, that's right, A Night of Words.
Yeah, that's when I first saw it.
Yeah, so you were there the first time. That was the first time I ever did it. And I was not comfortable with it that night. But the crowd immediately started singing.
And they started saying, "This
and I was
ain't
like,
that."
Oh, I got gold.
You were like cueing them to.
Did not cue them. Just started because I'm nervous. I'm not even in a space to cue them. I'm in my head. This ain't that.
I don't think in Germantown they were doing it that much. There was that one guy.
Yeah, but this first night you were there. This is great because Link was there.
Wait, you were there the night I met?
The first night I performed This Ain't That, he was there. Mm-hmm. And all those verses weren't even written. That last verse wasn't written at the time. And I actually went into, because it's a hook, here's the other thing, and this is a secret. Because it's a poem with a hook, you can actually go into a totally different poem. When you're ready to do the verse, I went to that particular night, I did the hook to This Ain't That, and then I went into a poem called David and Goliath, right?
Another one of yours?
Yeah, another poem, totally different poem.
At what point did you go into it?
It was the last I did. You did I Love Langston Hughes, Peace of Maya Angelou, but this Art Without Revenue. But this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. And then it goes. You bring it. You slow it down, right? And then you go. David held 5 stones. KP holds 2 pens. So I would do that. I would start those lines the same way. Okay, I'm 40 years old.
Yes.
I ain't playing no games, right? So I could always take out that 40-year-old verse and put in a poem right there. Right?
I relate everything back to Grateful Dead.
Word.
Because what they do is they'll segue you, like you're in the end of one song, and then you don't hear it coming, and then they're like, "Whoa, how'd they get there?"
I love transitions.
Yeah, the segues, yeah.
Like Water for Chocolate by Common. He works with the Soulquarians and Jay Dilla on that album, I believe, and the transitions are just crazy. You can just play the whole album nonstop. And I think about that in poetry. I think about it in a feature set. You know, you can go from one poem to the other without a break, without letting the crowd clap, without introducing the next poem. If you get into the energy of the set, you can just go. And some of my favorite feature sets that I've done, I just get in and go, and before I know it, the set is over.
Do you think that on the album, where the process is going to be on the album, that it'll have transitions like that, where it's almost plays like a concept album?
Yeah, that's one reason the album hasn't come out yet. We want to do all the extra stuff, right? Because you could put out an album that's a collection of poems, or you could put out an album that everything is thought about, right? The transitions, like very much. I'm always thinking about sequencing. A track that's not a poem. It might just be an instrumental or a snippet from the interview I did with Matt.
Yeah.
Right.
Amiri Baraka on the Ultimate Mixtape with KP Ultra and L1, the Philosopher. Link.
Oh my God.
Too much?
I just love Amiri Baraka.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has this poem called Dope. And he's like, ooh, 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 yeah, ooh, 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 yeah. And like he just gets into like, in the middle of the poem, he's like, that sound of like a dope fiend. And it's a political poem. Like, it's crazy. I love Amiri Baraka. Just what he does with sound. Like, he did it 40 years ago.
Yeah, it's great what the academic poets are doing, and they definitely have, a lot of skill, but maybe it's not as, I don't want to say a big word, but like, there's this word I learned when I was in school for psychology, and it was talking about therapists and how do you inhabit the space of your client, and they called it phenomenological. Like it's this big long word, and it just means like, can you imagine what that person's world is like?
Yeah,
can you be there
Take
with
you
them?
into a place.
Right?
Yeah.
And so like with Yates, I don't really go. I don't get there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit with Jack Kerouac.
Yeah.
But with this, what you're describing, it's great. So you got one more for us, Chris?
Yeah. Well, have some fun.
I think so. This is the one that inspired me to talk to you.
Oh, okay.
It was a night of people getting up there, and it just seemed like, I'm not. I don't want to say it in a bad way to say amateur, but the people that had gone earlier in the night, they were courageous, and they were getting up there, and they were speaking their truth, and they were doing it. And some of their voices sounded small. And it seemed like you can feel that it was a struggle. It wasn't a comfort of getting up there and being themselves. And then there was one person who felt like if they yelled, that they would get their point across. But then it just seemed like you're just yelling. You're just yelling so that I hear you more or whatever. And then there was you. And when you got up there, it was a calm. There was a confidence. There was just a feeling of like, okay, I'm going someplace. This is a person who's taking me on an experience. So I really, and that inspired me.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. Yeah, by nature, open mics like have amateurs because that's where we start. But yeah, and yeah, thank you. I'll just say thank you. Yeah.
I get a lot of that.
I like that analysis.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me when I get to reflect back to people, because I might not be the poet. I mean, I've been writing poetry for a long time, but I don't think I'm the one. I'm not going to go up there, and I'm certainly not going to compete with it. But I'll try to get some of my emotions out, and I'll do it for me. And it's kind of private. But I'm not the one, and I play guitar, and I'm not going to perform for anybody. And I make paintings, and I may hang them up in my house, but I don't think they're worth money. It's not a commodity to me. You
talk about the poet yelling. That happens sometimes. A poet yells, and like that's supposed to bring value to it. Sometimes it's fast, but the words aren't really there. And so it's these things that can. And I'm not. This is no shade to anybody, but there are these things you can do in place of good poetry. Sometimes I'm not saying I'm the best poet in the world, but there are some things you can do in place of good poetry, and it has a performance aspect to it. But then it's like, I really love poetry, and I love, like, what does that poem say? What are these lines saying? Not that they have to be deep, but what do they actually get into? And I'm 40, and my poems at 40 sound different than they did at, like, in my mid-20s. And so when you talk about the confidence on stage, and the stage is where I'm most comfortable in life. I'm in a relationship, I'm engaged, but it's times where in my relationship, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I got to figure it out. On stage, because I've normally seen the scenario before, I have a lot more confidence. I normally, have a better idea of what I'm doing on stage. In poetry, when you tell somebody you're a poet, they go like, oh, like Shakespeare, like Roses are Red, or like, like Nikki Giovanni, like Maya Angelou, or like you mean like Langston Hughes, Negro Dreams of Rivers, like normally not even that deep, but Love Jones, yeah. like Love Jones, like Snap, and like I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, but not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Art without revenue, well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. You watch Love Jones, but this ain't that. You heard a bunch of poems, but this ain't that. Could write about my broken home, but this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah, this ain't. I came back. I claim black, 'cause that's who I am. I came back. I sent it out like a telegram. I came back. I claim back, 'cause that's who I am. I came back. I sent it out like a telegram. I can smell the scam. I can smell the spam. I can smell the fake lines written for the gram. I can smell the fake lines written for the slam. In private they be hating, in public they be fam. I don't really do this, I'm just playing with the flow. I break it down one time just to let you know that this ain't that, that this ain't that, that this ain't that. I said no, no, no. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, not the money. Well, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. No, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Art without revenue? No, this ain't that. This ain't that. Nah. Okay. I'm 40 years old. I ain't playing no games. They doing that, I'm doing this. No, it's not the same. I write a piece, I embrace it with a unique voice. No trophies, no rings, but I'm the people's choice. For 20-something years, been getting paid for my work. From Texas to Atlanta, Atlanta to New York. Seeing my face on the flyer, name on the marquee. Sold poems out the trunk of a Grand Marquise. You can catch me on the stage reciting words I put on track. My merch on the table, the culture on my back. Got love for my peers, but I know what I hear. It's starting to sound the same for the last 5 years. KP or keep pushing, we don't have to live in fear. We all got trauma. We don't have to prove it here. I critique within the culture and lyrically stay strapped. Don't confuse them with this, 'cause this ain't that. I love Nikki Giovanni, but this ain't that. Give me snaps, but not the money. No, this ain't that. It's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. This ain't that. Yeah, no, this ain't that. You read Langston Hughes, but this ain't that. Peace to Maya Angelou, but this ain't that. Art without revenue, well, this ain't that. Yeah, this ain't that. Nah, this ain't that. Yeah. This ain't that.
So I think what it is, you're telling it that it ain't that, but I think what it is it's really just you.
Yeah, something unique. Hopefully,
I think it's just you.
without ego.
to me,
hopefully, it's something unique.
wow, we've clearly stated what it's what it's not, because you're not trying to be somebody else, and you're just trying to inhabit the space that could only be you,
Word. Oh my God. Yes. It's 'cause like
and put it out there for the whole world to see. That's pretty hard. That's a pretty big job to try to just let your whole self be known. Everybody wants to be seen, right?
Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and Thelonious Monk, they created jazz, right? They made jazz music, and they let whoever else want to put a title on it and define it. I'm not really concerned about doing poetry the way poetry has been done, and I'm not concerned about how you talk about it. Like, I'm just concerned with creating it the way that feels genuine to me.
That's what I got. And then the other cool thought that occurred to me during that performance, and thank you so much for being so generous with your performances tonight, was that, you could read that and you would get meaning from it. But when you do what you did, it was almost like you made a sample within the structure, if that makes any sense. You started singing, right? And so here's like a sample from yourself, So how long? What's that?
Go ahead. It's just a switch up, right?
It's
just playing around with the art, like playing around with the sound of it. Yeah.
Just a switch for you. It's just a switch up. Yeah, I complicated it. I overthought it.
No, you're good. No, I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah.
So how long ago did you write that?
Oh, so this is October. This Ain't That was written in like It was written in my, it was written in my current job. I was just sitting at work one day. So I mean, it was probably written in. This is October, so that was probably written in May of this year, and set in a notebook. Set in a notebook for a while, and really was the hardest thing for me to record because it was so different for me. It's not even written, the way I normally write my poems. It's all hook. Like it's really just hooks. You know what I mean? And then even I came back, I claim black because that's who I am. I came back, I claim black. That could just be a hook, right? And so but I've always been curious about I've been curious about how do you write a hit poem? That's always a question in my head. How do you write a hit poem, right? Something and when I answer that question, I say something in that needs to repeat. One of the issues in poetry that makes it hard for the crowd to like do it with you is that line is only going to be said one time. But if I have a repetitive part, people can sing that. People can sing This Ain't That. That's not really hard to remember. And it feels good as a poet to have a piece in my catalog that people can do along with me. My girlfriend sings This Ain't That. Like she bobs her head to it. And that she don't bob her head to nothing else, you know what I mean, that I write. She doesn't bob her head to the process. She hears the process and likes it, but she bobs her head to This Ain't That, right? I can hear her humming it, right? And that makes me feel good as a poet because we don't get that feeling very often. And so This Ain't That is one of my favorites. And I'll say this, the reason it was written is because you come and you listen to a poetry feature, you listen to 15 to 20 minutes of poetry, and sometimes it's just like, oh my God, metaphor, 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 simile, 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 and it's so like deep that it's like, it's almost overkill.
You get a little super saturated?
Yeah, super saturated. And so I'm like, all right, where can I give the audience a break? If I just did a poem called Death versus Destiny about not expecting to live to see 35, or I do the process about the ego and the path of a poet that they might not even care about because they don't do poetry. Where can I bring that audience member back in an easy way that's true to me as well and still saying something, right? Because it says like, yo, like we don't have to write a certain way. Like we don't have to do what Nikki Giovanni did. We can love Nikki Giovanni. We can study her, but we don't have to repeat it. I don't think Nikki Giovanni was sitting around trying to recreate Phyllis Wheatley when she wrote, right? And so why are we trying to recreate anybody? We can just do what we want to do as artists in the parameter of poetry. You know what I mean?
So you've brought This Ain't That around to quite a few spaces?
It's been done. You saw it done at Say It With Your Chest. I did it at VIP, and that was my VIP voices. Shout out to Voice and Power, Louis Marrero, Jovan McCoy. And shout out to Mike Phillips, too, because I knew Mike Phillips before I knew Jovan or Louis. So shout out to Mike Phillips. And his twin. So anyway, This Ain't That. I did This Ain't That at VIP for the first time when I featured there in May or June, and I did it at Say It With Your Chest. And I haven't performed it a whole lot.
Oh, that's really cool. I would imagine that at some point the audience is going to start saying it with you.
It happened immediately. So the first place I ever did it was at an event hosted by Life. Shout out to Life. And
Words, I was there.
Word, that's right, A Night of Words.
Yeah, that's when I first saw it.
Yeah, so you were there the first time. That was the first time I ever did it. And I was not comfortable with it that night. But the crowd immediately started singing.
And they started saying, This
and I was
Ain't
like,
That?
Oh, I got gold.
You were like cueing them to...
Did not cue them. Just started, because I'm nervous. I'm not even in a space to cue them. I'm in my head. This ain't that.
I don't think in Germantown they were doing it that much. There was that one guy.
Yeah. But this first night, you were there. This is great, because Link was there.
Wait, you were there the night I met?
The first night I performed This Ain't That, he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And all those verses weren't even written. That last verse wasn't written at the time. And I actually went into, because it's a hook, here's the other thing, and this is a secret. Because it's a poem with a hook, you can actually go into a totally different poem. When you're ready to do the verse, I went to that particular night, I did the hook to This Ain't That, and then I went into a poem called David and Goliath, right?
Another one of yours?
Yeah, another poem, totally different poem.
At what point did you go into it?
It was the last I did. You did a Love Langston Peace of Maya Angelou, but this, are without revenue, but this ain't that, nah, this ain't that. And then it goes, you bring it, you slow it down, right? And then you go, David held 5 stones. KP holds 2 pens. So I would do that. I would start those lines the same way. Okay, I'm 40 years old.
Yes.
I ain't playing no games, right? So I could always take out that 40-year-old verse and put in a poem right there. Right?
Everything, I relate everything back to Grateful Dead.
Word.
Because what they do is they'll segue you, like you're in the end of one song, and then you don't hear it coming, and then they're like, "Whoa, how'd they get there?"
I love transitions.
Yeah, the segues. Yeah,
like Water for Chocolate by Common. He works with the Soulquarians and Jay Dilla on that album, I believe, and the transitions are just crazy. You can just play the whole album nonstop. And I think about that in poetry. I think about it in a feature set. You know, you can go from one poem to the other without a break, without letting the crowd clap, without introducing the next poem. If you get into the energy of the set, you can just go. And in some of my favorite feature sets that I've done, I just get in and go, and before I know it, the set is over.
Do you think that on the album, where the process is going to be on the album, that it'll have transitions like that, where it's almost plays like a concept album?
Yeah, that's one reason the album hasn't come out yet. We want to do all the extra stuff, right? Because you could put out an album that's a collection of poems, or you could put out an album that everything is thought about, right? The transitions, like very much. I'm always thinking about sequencing. A track that's not a poem. It might just be an instrumental or a snippet from the interview I did with Matt, right? You know what I mean? Wu-Tang, that they have a radio interview snippet on there.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think about those things, even in poetry, right? Even in poetry, I think about these things. I don't want to do a traditional poetry album. I don't want my poetry album to sound like a poetry album, even if it doesn't win a Grammy, even if it's not nominated, any of that stuff. I really want it to sound different.
There was no box.
But I want to say there's a couple lines in This Ain't That I do want to highlight. So it
Please.
goes, it's always sad and never sunny. Well, this ain't that. And that's my favorite line of the poem. I think that's what the poem is about, that poetry doesn't have to be about trauma. This is what I'm talking about in No Limit Soldiers. That this doesn't have to be about trauma. We all have trauma. We don't have to prove it here. We literally all have trauma. We could do that all night. We could go 3 hours talking about our trauma. I could tell you about how I started writing when my mother had Alzheimer's, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and that my mother's been in a nursing home since 2008. We can get into that, and I'm willing to talk about it. And there are poems that say that, but I don't need to say that every poem, and I don't need to say that every album, right? I can talk about my dad being in the same city, living 5 minutes away, and I never met him till he had diabetes and he was about to die, right? Like, and I say this because it's like I'm KP out in the world, and my trauma's not always in the poetry, but I can relate when the poet gets up there and talks about their trauma. I can relate to that, and I can say, you might need to get that out tonight. But when you make a career out of the trauma, I have an issue with it. I just have an issue with that. You know what I mean? Because people hear us, and people take on the energy that we have in our work. So when somebody hears This Ain't That, and they bob in their head and they happy, I like that. I like that. That's the energy I gave them. I want them to think sometimes and maybe think about their own life and be introspective and maybe what they're going through. But on the flip side of that, you might have had a bad day, and I need to do This Ain't That to lighten the mood. You know what I mean? To just be in a different space.
You've been listening to KP Ultra and L1, the Philosopher. How'd I do there?
You did great.
L1, the Philosopher, is my guy right now.
Yes.
That's my guy. I'll be down at the Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I'll be down at Pennsylvania on October 12th. It's a Saturday night in Roxborough on Umbria Street. And we're going to hear some poems. We're going to hear people who are competing against each other for a prize for poetry. You know, and it's been a delight to have Chris, KP Ultra, here in the studio tonight to broaden the horizons of the Ultimate Mixtape. There's about 4 minutes left in the show. I'm just going to play a little music, and you guys want to sign off?
Yeah.
I should go first because you should be last.
Okay.
I want to say thank you for inviting me. Right, this was a beautiful situation, and I'm definitely going to call Road Poet after this and talk to him. But please follow me, L1NK215. I am a mover and shaker in a room full of movers and shakers. If you are, I'm going to ask you what you're moving and shaking, and don't act nervous when I talk to you. Please stop moving and shaking. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Curator of Pennsylvania. And shout out to Complex Angel, because Complex and L1 are doing an event on October 19th at Eco Foundation in 52nd and Market.
Stereotypes of a Poet. Yes.
Stereotypes of a Poet. This event is sold out, but she's doing one with Monty Reed in November at the Discovery Center. So check that. That'll be the next volume of that. I just thought about Pennsylvania rhymes with Pennsylvania, and I don't know if that was on purpose.
Yes, that was on purpose.
Okay. I just caught that.
I just thought it was a wrestling reference.
Word.
It's layered.
Word.
It's layered.
WrestleMania. So this is KP Ultra. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Matt, for inviting us to the Ultimate Mixtape. You can follow me at KP84 Ultra. I was born in 84, so the number's 84. KP84 Ultra. More important than following me right now, I really want you to listen to the poetry, the process, No Limit Soldiers, Some Ancestors, Royal Rumble, which I couldn't do on here, talking about wrestling, Royal Rumble. These are the new poems that I put out this year. So everything's available on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream your music, wherever you listen to Beyonce and Kendrick, you can listen to KP Ultra as well. So stream KP Ultra. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hear a little Billy Cobham, and there's only 3 minutes left, and there are 2 minutes now left in the show. So we'll catch you next week when we'll do our Gothic episode for Halloween.
Hey.
You guys like Bauhaus or what?
Spooky.